Welcome everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Adam Connolly, representing Tour Pros and also the International Association of Tour Directors and Guides. I'm not going to talk for very long at all. I'm going to hand it over to our very good friends Niall and David from a pretty awesome tour company in Dublin called Insta Tours. And they're going to talk you through how to take amazing Instagram photos when you're out on tour. So I will hand over to those two. And say thank you very much for joining us. And if you have any questions, whack them in the chat. And if the guys have got time at the end, we'll go through them at the end. So, guys, I will share my screen, get the presentation up, and it's over to you guys.
Hey, everybody. That was a lovely introduction. Just introduce myself again, Niall, and this is David. We have another brother. My other brother is the co-founder, Connor, but unfortunately he couldn't be here today. But to start off, I just wanted to wish everyone a very, very happy St. Patrick's Day. So I have my own glass of Guinness right here. Everyone can see that.
So do I. Sorry, I forgot.
Official one. So I'm going to give a nice cheers before we start. If anyone else has a glass of Guinness, feel free to join, but who knows. Yeah. So if you see me sip off a few, I need a few Dutch courage. I'm also honored, by the way, to be talking in front of people who present in tour guides every day. So it's a bit nerve-wracking, but if anyone has any feedback, I'm sure you guys are pros. So anything you can add on, I'd love to hear. Yeah, so the business we set up, by the way, is called Insta Tours. So let's go. Can I go to the next slide, please? So it was set up by me and my brother last year. So we have me, I'm in the bottom left there, happy St. Patrick's Day, doing my best Irish impression. So my brother, and then we also have David here, who's one of the photography experts who is going to come in and give some tips at the end. So next slide, please. So just an overview, we're going to do the introduction. We're going to have just a bit about the company, how it started, like just a bit of background, then going to relate how this can help you and market trends and what we're seeing. And then we're going to go into the more photography tips that you can take away. Because if you can help on your tour at the end, grab that perfect photo, I think that's the way we can go. So why don't we just get into it? And as well, sorry, we're going to have a Q&A section at the end. If there's any questions, feel free to just put them in the comments and we can address them later. So think of some questions as we go along if you can. Is it possible the next slide there, please? So our story. So this all happened about a year ago, how Connor came up with the idea. So my brother actually went away to this very, very lovely mountain, Kotor, in Montenegro. I don't know if anyone's ever seen it. So he went all the way up to the mountain and he took this photo. And the photo, well, we're going to see it in a second, the photo was a bit iffy. So can we go to the next slide? So it's his photo on the left, and on the right is actually a photo, I think, 30 seconds down the road from where he took the previous photo. And you can just see the massive difference. Now, I'm sure in the right photo, there's some editing as well. So he took this photo on the left, and he went back to his hostel, very happy with himself, and he showed his friends at the time. And they showed him their photo on the right. He's going, how did you get such a better photo than me? We're in the same place. And they said, listen, we gave the tour guide €10 and he showed us the best spots and how to take it. And he went, that's a really good idea. So he came back and he told me this idea. And it kind of sat with me for a bit and he started to come up with the business. And during this time, I actually went on my own holiday with my then girlfriend. So I'm my now ex-girlfriend. And we went on holidays and next slide, please. I realized I had become this thing. A boyfriend of Instagram. Does anyone know what a boyfriend of Instagram is? Hopefully by the pictures there you can tell it is these boyfriends who have to take 400 photos of their girlfriend at the time or their partner and do it. So I spent about a third of the holiday just trying to capture the perfect photo of my girlfriend. And it just wasn't happening. And I went, you know what? I really would pay someone to do this. So we came back and we set up the business together and we just found that people really, really like photos and they want to get great photos of themselves. So we've designed a tour in which they do three things. We came up with one single mission. Next slide, please. Our mission is to help our guests capture that perfect moment, because image is important. And we found that people really want photos of them doing stuff and what they like. So we set up a tour that does 3 things. You get to discover the city, explore it while you learn with the tour guide, learn a few tips and tricks from our photographers on how to take the perfect photo, and most importantly, we'll take photos of you while you discover the city. So here's some examples of some photos we've taken on some recent tours before the pandemic occurred, obviously, because we're not operating. Next slide, please. So these are some examples of, these are places in Dublin that we like to call hidden gems. And it's just about seeing the city differently. So not only are we getting new tourists in to see different aspects of the city, we've also really, we're really excited to show just parts you wouldn't even go of Dublin normally, or any of the UK cities. So next slide, please. So as we broke it down, there's 3 main parts. I said explore, learn, and capture. So we want to take them to these incredible spots in the city. We want our tourists to learn and pick up a few tips from David or other photographers. We also want to capture them. So that's really how the business works and kind of the background behind it. So what does this mean for you guys? Can you go to the next slide, please? Oh, sorry, yeah, this is a market trend. So this is how it relates to you guys. What we're seeing in the market, what you guys can take away from this presentation and go back and bring to your own tours. So what we're seeing is that people want experience chasing, okay? They want, more and more people are buying experiences. They don't really want products as much. So, and more importantly, while they're doing these experiences, they not only want these experiences, they want to be seen doing them. They want the social proof to show off to their friends, to show off on their accounts and display the fact that, you know, they're a fun person who likes to travel and they look good while doing it. So I think, you know, if you look in social media these days, there's definitely a form of like social media currency about how best you can display yourself. We had one guy, this is my favorite guy who's ever come on the trip. So if most of you are aware, there's a dating app called Tinder. So he came on the trip and he got photos in all these locations and he went, this is perfect. It's gonna really spice up my dating profile. The only problem was he had to come back the next day because he realized he did every single photo in the same shirt. So he came back the next day with a change of clothes and he did it in very different locations. But this is what I mean though about experience chasing. So you get the experience and have lots of fun, but you also get to be seen while doing it. This might be a little vain, but it's just how the trends are going these days. So I think I've summarized it up. I think it's the next slide. If you can go to the next slide, please. There's a famous saying, if a tree falls in the forest and nobody's around to hear it, doesn't make a sound. I think we can replace that with, if a tour happens in a city and nobody's around to photograph it, did it really happen? If you go all the way to Dublin or Amsterdam or Manchester or London or Chicago or Frankfurt or any of these places, and you didn't really capture the moment or get an experience from it, or you know, have a little memento for yourself, did it happen? I mean, the answer is yes, but it definitely helps if you have that great photo to showcase it off. Another trend we're seeing, so if we can go to the next slide, please, is the rise of image-based social media. So we have the winners on the left and we have the losers on the right. So we're seeing that more and more people are drifting towards image and video-based social media, okay? And this is why it's important when people want to capture these moments. So the main one is still, Instagram is still the king. I mean, I kind of have to do that because our business is called Insta Tours, but I promise you that Instagram is still the #1 thing. The #1 big mover is kind of TikTok. I'm sure everyone's very aware. I'm glued to my phone these days and I'm probably wasting a lot of time on it myself. But then you got some other ones that you might not think about as much. Visco is kind of a new and up and coming photography based app, and you'll see it sometimes in people's bios. And it's kind of similar to Instagram. And then you also have Snapchat, which is kind of making a comeback in my opinion. But the point is that these are all very image based. There's not a lot of text in them. If you look at the losers like Facebook, Twitter, and maybe I'm showing my own age here, Bebo, if anyone remembers that back in the day, or MySpace, you can see that more and more people, they want to just have the image or the video base of that experience. So we think that this trend will continue and more people will want these image and video based content. So next trend, please. Next slide, please. Overall, to summarize, sorry, previous one. Overall, to summarize, basically, kind of get away, image is important. I think now more than ever, I think every single person I talk to, the first thing they look up when they're buying a phone is what are the specs of the camera on the phone? or more and more people. I think there was a 40% increase in the number of cameras bought in Ireland last year. So photography is really, really on the rise, and people see it as this thing they want to do. So we want to come in, not only show them how to do it, get the photos, and build on this trend. Next slide, please. So how can we help you? Because, okay, you're probably sitting there going, this is a great business idea, I'm sold, but what can I actually learn from this presentation that I can take back to my own tours? So I think I was talking with Adam the last day and I came across, if anyone has ever seen the movie Armageddon, now stick with me a bit. In the movie, they train drillers to be astronauts, okay? Instead of training the astronauts to be drillers. And this is what we want to do. What we offer is we're having photographers become tour guides, but you guys are going to be tour guides. We're going to give you a few extra tips to grab that perfect photo on your tour, and hopefully that can add something extra to your tours. Because if you're at the end of your tours, you can say, look, oh, I can take this photo for you, and you have certain rules that Dave's going to show to you, like the rule of thirds or the lighting angles. It can make that tourist's whole day, and they can get that great photo. And we've found as well, people are so reciprocative of that kind of stuff that they're much more willing to give a good review. So if you can grab that great photo, you can learn a few things from David here. I really think it's something that you can take into your own tours and just add a lot to. So to summarize back on the Armageddon thing, not only do I love the movie and want this poster in the presentation, we want to train you to be tour guides first, and we want you to do your own amazing tours with your own amazing thing. But we want to just give you a few tips to help you with the photography side if possible. Always something nice to have in your back pocket if needed. So can we go to the next slide, please? I'm going to pass over to my lovely colleague, David, who's going to delve in more in the specifics on how you can grab these amazing photos.
Could I get to the next slide, please? So hi, everyone. I'm David, and these are some of the areas I'll be covering today. So we have the rule of thirds, dead space, leading lines, positioning and angles, time of day, location, shooting, posing, and a little bit about Instagram editing tools. So just to give you a little bit of background about myself, I studied photography for 3 years, and now I'm a freelance photographer. Roughly a year ago, I saw an ad for being an Insta guide, and I decided to apply for it, and I've loved it ever since, and loving seeing the business grow. So here are quite a few things that go into capturing a great Instagram photo. So we're going to start off with the rule of thirds. The basic principle behind the rule of thirds is to break an image down into thirds, both horizontally and vertically, so that you have 9 parts. So we want to get the composition of the photo right. How are things arranged? What shapes, textures, colors that are going to make up the image? What are we looking to achieve with this balance? Well, people use the rule of thirds because it makes the photo a lot more engaging and gets the viewer's eyes directed at the subject. When taking a photograph, there is always a subject. Could be, for instance, this landscape shot. The subject is the mountain, but for your own preference, it could have been the waterfall, it could have been the bridge, it could have been the river. It's down to your preference. So using the rule of thirds, you will never have a subject in the center of the photo. It'll always be to the side, but yeah, always to be the side. So looking at this first shot of the landscape, the mountain, of course, is the subject. I would have preferred it to be the waterfall, but it's a photographer's choice. So the river, anyway, sorry. How they use the rule of thirds? Well, the horizontal lines are used as the subject, while the vertical lines are used to keep the photograph level. So the worst thing to happen, of course, is when you're out on a location, taking a photograph or photographing someone, and you think you took a perfect shot. You go home, you look at it, and it's wonky and it's not level. And so what I always say to anyone is just take your time and make sure that the photo is level and everything looks great. And yeah, so now we're going to move on to dead space. Actually, no, sorry. We'll move on. No, sorry. Can you move back one, please? We're going to look at the portrait. So when taking a portrait of someone using the rule of thirds, the intersecting lines will always end up on the eyes. Most people always, when looking at a portrait shot, they always end up looking at the eyes first and then the overall shot. So with the rule of thirds, you want to, in a sense, have the eyes lined up on the intersecting points. So can we move on to the next slide, please?
So, David, you basically want to have the intersections of the most important part of the photo. You're
Yes.
saying where your eyes are drawn, is
Yes.
it?
Yeah, exactly. So dead space. Dead space is extra space that is not being used in your photos. The yellow boxes in each image is dead space. So let's just talk about the second image first. With this shot, if we were to take out the dead space, you would end up having the woman's shoulder too close to the frame of the shot, and it might look too zoomed in. So the dead
This
space
is the one with the hat, is it? Sorry, David.
It is, yes.
Yes.
Yes. So if we lost my train of thought, sorry.
Apologies, sorry, that's my fault.
No problem. So the dead space helps you frame your shot and doesn't take away from the image, and also draws your attention to the subject. So now, if you need to get rid of the extra space, I would move yourself a little closer to the subject, or look at what is in the frame and decide what you want in it and what you don't want in it. So for instance, for the second shot, when I was photographing it, to the right of the shot, there was a man walking down towards me. And of course, I didn't really want the man in the shot because I would maybe have to edit it a bit later on. So I angled myself a little more towards the fence and moved myself a little closer and got a nicer shot than having a big wide shot. So can we move to, actually, no, sorry. I'm going to talk about the other shots. So with the first shot, the left one, the yellow, there's quite a lot of dead space in this shot. Now, the reason why I left the dead space in is because it shows off the photo a lot more. You have a lot more subject to look at. Now, it could be a little boring if you left it in, but I decided to leave it out. But it's down to everyone's preference if they want the dead space in or not. So we'll move to the third photo. With the third photo, this was an interesting shot to take because just to the right of this shot, there's a road. And what I love to do is follow leading lines. Now with this shot, we have 3-4 leading lines. Sorry, reading the questions. I won't distract it. Yes, so with this shot, I could have moved the dead space in a little closer and to not to have it in there. But you always kind of want dead space in shots just to give the photo a bit more interesting aspect. And then we have the landscape shot. Now, with this landscape shot, I probably should have recropped it and got rid of the dead space. And I probably, if I was ever to post it, I would do that. But with this shot, you can crop it and get rid of the dead space. So where the yellow box is, you'd probably crop it just on the corner and also on the left-hand side to the other orange building. But yeah, it's down to everyone's preference, of course. So can we move to the next slide, please? Okay, leading lines. I love leading lines. It's any photographer's dream to have many leading lines. So next is leading lines. They are all around us. And when it comes to taking a photograph, they help us direct our eyes and also add a lot of depth to a lot of photos. Starting off with the first image, which is the left one with the man in the photo. We have 4 leading lines in this shot. We have the trees, we have the footpath, we have the double yellow lines, and we have the middle line going up the dotted middle line. Now, all these lines are directing our eyes to the guy, but also to the building in the backdrop. And with leading lines, you kind of, when you're on location, you have to just kind of stand and look what there is around you. Sometimes there might be none, but most of the time there will be definitely 1 or 2. And they just really help direct your subject. Or, you know, if you want to be quirky, you can not have them on your leading lines. So I could have moved him a bit to the left, and it might have made the viewer's eye more to look at the building in the backdrop instead of at him. But anyway. Okay, we're going to move to the next photograph, which is the middle photograph. With this middle photograph, there are many different leading lines. We have the fence on the very left-hand side, we have the train tracks, and then we have the footpath. And if you wanted to go into a lot more, you have the road markings and the building. Now, all this kind of aims you at the Stephen's Green Shopping Centre, which is a very historical building in Dublin. But we're just going to stay with the 3 leading lines at the moment. So if you were to photograph, if you were to photograph a person with this shot, you would put them midway up along the footpath. But if that's down to your preference, of course. But landscape shot, it kind of just directs your eyes again. Okay, so the very right photo, the third photo, I really like this shot because of so many, well, there's actually 4 leading lines. We have the footpaths and we have the buildings. Now it's great. It's kind of perfectly timed with this cyclist going from left to right, and I got him right in the middle. But of course, you could put a person there, or you could just take this shot. This shot would be nice without a person, but also with his bag being very colorful, it adds to all the color in the shot. And with these leading lines, they give a lot more depth to the photo, and not just you're looking off into, because with this shot, your viewers, if they're looking at it, they might just want to see what's along, like in the distance and not up close. So it's just guide your eyes to the person and not the background. All right, can we move to the next slide, please? All right, positioning and angles. This one, it's very difficult for people to get their head around it. They'll always do, I'll say, if I'm on a tour and I'm teaching people how to position themselves, they'll always listen and then they'll do their own thing. So this is like a very important point, I would probably say. So we'll take these 4. So these 4 shots are all in the same location. However, you would have no idea that the second photo is in the same area. As you can see, all 4 shots are taken in different positions and from a different angle. So when you go to any location, look at the location for any angles. So maybe, lower yourself down, or take a step closer, or if you can find a step or a footpath to elevate yourself, and to aim your camera down, it can always make a total difference. It's also good to look at the backgrounds and the clothing of your subject to see if anything will either pop out or blend in. Also, change the position of your subject. Move them about the place. If you have clients and they're just standing in the same place, just kindly ask them, hey guys, like stand over here, or move to this side. And if you take, just say, if you're standing still and you take 5 steps to your right, there'll always be a different angle. You might see something different compared to where you're originally standing. Or with your clients or with yourself, you could always crouch down, sit down. And I have quite a lot of shots of myself which are kind of embarrassing, but when I'm on tour, I'm a little bit extreme with my positioning, and you might end up seeing me lying down flat on the ground, aiming my camera up, and always then I'll have people photographing me instead of the location, which I'm just like, guys, come on, pay attention. We're here for the location, not me. But yeah, you can go to that extreme if you wanted to, but probably not. You probably want to just stand still and take your shot, which is grand, no problem. So looking at these photos, I would say if you have props around you, so for instance, the very first photo with the girl sitting on the barrel, that barrel was off to the side, and I had taken photographs of her multiple times in this location, but luckily we had a barrel there. And just to use anything that you have around you. And then for the second photograph, this shot, if you look at the first photograph, you have the graffiti on the right hand side. That is where he's standing. I again photographed him multiple times in the same location and didn't like anything I shot. And then I just said, all right, here. He was also a very awkward poser, and I couldn't pose him at all. So I said, all right, let's just put you up against this wall. Putting up someone against the wall is, the easiest thing to do. And it kind of calms them down, relaxes them a bit, and then you can just stand there and just look off somewhere. Also, another tip, when photographing someone, to let them just kind of look around the place. Don't, if they're good at posing, let them do their thing. But if they're not, I'd say just let them look around the place and just don't disturb them. And most of the time, you'll get a good shot.
There's hope for us all, David, isn't there?
Huh? There's hope for everyone. Yes. I'm a terrible person to pose. I'm dreadful. I like staying behind the camera, not going in front of it. But I'll look good sometimes, even in front of the camera, if I look off to the side. It's grand. You'll have plenty of potential, Niall. Don't worry.
Thankfully, you capture everyone wonderfully.
So with the third photo, again, it's from a different angle. At this shot, I am on my knees, I think, probably, or maybe I'm crouched down, and I'm aiming my camera up towards, or my phone up towards her. And again, it's a nice little unique shot. You're still seeing somewhat of the location. You're still seeing the umbrellas, still seeing the restaurant. And it's just always just nice to move around. And then for the last and final shot, we have the reflection shot. Now, this location is very known for, if you ever look up Anne's Lane, which is this is location, there's always puddle shots because it's just, it's very nice. It's unique. So with this shot again, I think I'm lying down for this shot probably. And I have my phone, or you can have your camera, but mostly phone. It's a lot easier with phones, to flip your phone upside down and to put it just against the water, but right in front of it, not on top of it, and not too far back. And you'll see that you'll get a double reflection. So you'll of course be able to see the person or even the area, or and then you'll be able to see it in the back in the water as well. And it's always just a nice effect. Now you can do the same thing again with, I don't have any examples with me, but basically you can grab your phone, and if you have a second phone, or if your clients don't mind giving you their second phone, you can grab your phone and just say this is another phone, and you can put it like this against your camera, and using the reflection on the glass of your phone can do double exposure or double reflection, which is always quite nice.
I actually added that photo in the link in the comments. I re-added it there again if anyone wants to check out what David's talking about with the reflection, because it's a really, really cool trick. You can get some amazing photos with it.
It's really helpful if it hasn't rained and there's no puddles around. You can use it for that aspect.
Welcome to the UK and Ireland.
Yeah. Can we move to the next? Thank you. All right. So the time of day. So understanding light and how to use it is one of the most important rules in capturing a great photo. Time of day is very important when it comes to photographing people, not so important with landscapes, but the second and fourth shot are for my camera users. If we have anyone out there in the audience who use cameras, phone users shouldn't really come across this problem. So for the camera users out there, if any of these problems happen to you, so with underexposed or overexposed shots, or to your extremely exposed shots, it's very easy to fix them. You can just go into either your editing software or into Instagram, and you just add or subtract lighting, or else you can just change your camera settings, and that should hopefully fix it. And it's not the end of the world. These photos are very easy to fix. Then we have the most hated thing when on tour, the ghost face. Now I call it the ghost face. There probably is a better term for it, but I call it the ghost face. So the ghost face, which is our middle shot, this happens with both cameras and phones. When the sun is at its brightest, mostly early in the morning, and probably around, I'd say, from 7 a.m. to about 11 a.m. This is most of the time it'll happen. So I would say to people, don't go out. If you're photographing people, do not bring people out between these times, because this could happen to you. Now, if you have clouds are a great thing because they'll diffuse the light for you. And they won't make the light so harsh on your face or on their faces, or on your face. You know, if you're photographing yourself, then also that. But if you do decide to take a photograph of yourself or someone, and you get a shot like this, I'm sorry to say, there's no way of fixing it. I've tried it multiple times with clients. They're like, "Oh, I love this shot. Can you please fix it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course." I go and try and fix it. No, you'll end up making the person in the photograph look like a ghost. That's the name, I guess. So, I would suggest then, if you're wanting not to achieve these type of shots, the best time to go to photograph people, I would say, is from 12 to 6 p.m. in the summer, and then from winter it's from 12 till 4. But of course it depends where you are. In Ireland anyway, it gets very dark at winter, like around 4 o'clock. So, yeah. All right, can we move? No, actually, sorry, I have still a little bit. Sorry about that. Oh yeah, so if you're photographing people with the ghost shot, try and find somewhere that's shadows. Trees are actually gorgeous sometimes. If it's really bright and it's a blue sunny day and you have no clouds in the sky, trees are always great. You can of course use them for full shadow, but also you can get really nice effects of the leaves on someone's face, and it can give it a really nice effect to it, and maybe a little bit of a unique shot. But or you can use reflections. Reflections are good as well. Now, just back to my camera users. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of the term bracketing, but I will explain it to you even if you don't know what it is. So bracketing is basically where you take 3 photographs. So the first one is kind of like our first photograph over here to our left, which is underexposed. The second shot is perfectly exposed, and then the third shot is overexposed. Now, the only problem with bracketing is that on the camera, it has a light meter, and there's a dial in the middle. And the dial, if it goes left, it means it's underexposed, and if it goes right, it means it's overexposed. Now, sometimes when I go out and shoots, the camera will say that it's a perfect shot and there's the perfect lighting. But when you take it and you look at it, it could be too dark. So sometimes you can't trust your camera, even though it's supposed to tell you, yep, this shot's great, you have no problem, please fire away. No, you have to kind of just bracket your shots. And once you get good enough, you can kind of judge it by yourself. But when you're first starting off, I'd say bracketing is very, very helpful. Oh, also another effect another thing to help you with if you are out on a sunny day and there's no clouds and no shadows and there's no buildings and you can't hide from the sun, you can always turn yourself towards, or turn your subject towards the sun. Now, the only bad aspect with this is sometimes will happen is your subject and their face will go really dark and like loads of shadow. And to fix that, of course, you'll think, okay, well, Jen, I'll just, focus on their face. And of course, their face will go all, get more light back into their face. But your background will go completely white and you won't be able to see anything and there'll be no detail. So it's really down to your perspective on that day if you have the chance to do that or not. But yeah. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, location shooting. So these 2 images are of the same location. One is how most people photograph it. Like this shot. Oh, I have a problem with this shot, but I'm not going to go into it just now. But yeah, this is how most people photograph it. The left shot is how everyone mostly photographs it if they go to this location. And even to this day, this is how a lot of people photograph it. Now, the one on the right is how I photograph it. So when it comes to photographing a location, there's 3 steps you can do. First is to go and photograph the location for an hour or 2 and try and get every possible angle. Second is to go and check out the location on Instagram, or to go and check out the location on Instagram or Google and to see how other people have photographed it, and then compare them to your own photos and see if there's anything you could have done better or improved them. And then the third thing is to go back to the same location again and photograph it again, but now you have the better shots in mind and hopefully you'll achieve better images. So when I bring people to this location or on a tour, the traditional shot on the left, I'll always ask them, okay, because this shot is photographed a lot. Loads of people will go here, and most of the time there's a line, and I'm bringing my clients along with me and going, all right, we're walking past this line, and then they'll stop behind us and go, no, we want to, this, if you're the guide, you're supposed to be taking this shot. This is, everyone's standing here taking this shot, so this is the shot. And I'm like, no, this is not the shot. I'm sorry. So anyway, I'll get them photograph the shot. And then I'll bring them to my side, which is just, basically we walk to the top where that van is. I walk there and I turn around, and then the shot you'll get is the one on the right. And I'll ask them then to take the shot that I have asked them to do. And then I'll ask them, all right, which one do you think is better? Now, 90% of the time, they'll say mine is, but then you do have the 10% who'll go, no, I think I like the other one. And I'm like, all right, I see how it is. That's fine. I'll just drop you off here and I'll bring everyone else on the tour, but no, that's fine. But yes, now the difference with these 2 shots and why the left one, in a sense, I don't like it, and I think my one's better, is, for instance, we have the ugly orange building in the background. You also don't have that much space to work with, and there's not that much light. Where this left shot is, where you're standing, of course, you have these 2 buildings side by side, and the light is only going to come straight down. You don't have it coming from, the sides. So with my shot on the right, you have a lot more space. I don't know how, you have like 3 building spaces, I guess. You have a lot more light coming in, you have a lot more space, and also then you get to see the gorgeous, well, I like it anyway, the great graffiti on the right hand side and the building. And then also you might get the aspect of having people there, and you can use people if you want. I don't like using people for this location, like people as your subjects in a sense. And then you also have the very famous pub at the end of this shot. But yeah, with this shot, um, it's always again about angles. This shot is straight down the middle. I think I'm kneeling down for this shot as well, because of the, you know, you want to capture the umbrellas in this shot. You have to kind of aim yourself up and not just do a straight line. So, but I'm sorry. So when it gets to a location, I always say move around and try and capture it from different angles and don't just stand in one spot. So for this shot, if you can see on my shot, to the very right hand side, there's this yellow and black pole going up the wall. I'll always bring people to the very right hand side of this wall and shoot towards this restaurant on the left hand side just to get a different angle. A lot of people don't like it, but it's just trying to get it into their minds that, you know, there are many different angles. You know, I always say, well, you know, you have these trees, shoot behind the trees. I know it's not a good shot, but it's still just get it again, different angles. But yeah, so that's different angles. I always suggest just to move around and don't stand still and sit down on the ground, lie on the ground, jump up in the ground, jump up the ground. That makes no sense. I'm sorry. All right, next slide, please. We have posing. This one is a pain in my ass sometimes, but it is okay. So when it comes to posing clients, it can either be very easy or very hard. Now, the very hard clients are the ones in the first photo, the left one. They were very, well, no, the one in the black was very difficult to pose. So, and I definitely have my fair share of, you know, this. So the best way to start is to make your clients comfortable, and also to make sure they're okay with posing. Like, you know, well, in a sense, asking them permission if they're okay with posing and if they're okay with you being photographed or they haven't been photographed. So some people are just comfortable with posing and have no problem. So I'd say the first two shots, the middle one and the right one, these people have no problem posing, which is great. It makes my life so much easier. But then you have people, for instance, that woman on the left, who are just uncomfortable and maybe yeah, self-conscious. So when it comes to people that you have that are self-conscious and uncomfortable with posing, I would suggest how I have these two different pictures on the right, female poses and male poses. What I always do when it comes to having people that aren't comfortable, I will have on my phone a collection of poses, males and females, so that yeah, I'll just say, okay, I'll give them on my phone and go, all right, look through these poses, pick one that you think you can do, and you know, do it. Now, sometimes they're just like, oh no, that's too much, I can't do that. I'll go, okay, I'll do it for you. You can photograph me. Now, sometimes this backfires because then they'll be like, all right, let's pick the worst photo or the silliest photo. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then I look like an absolute idiot here, but okay, that's fine. So yeah, I'll then look at the photo, go to the location, and try and pose for it. And I'll try and mimic the pose and let them photograph me, or I'll say, all right, you photograph me now. Now it's my turn, and try and get them to do it. Now, sometimes what I'll do is when they do the pose, this is from my photography background, is that I will adjust people. So just say, let's for instance, all right, okay. So the photo, if a girl had her hand like this, for instance, and you know, in the shot it doesn't look the best, or with looking at her it doesn't look the best with her doing this. Oh, actually, that's the thing I had to tell you. So when you're putting, if someone is using their hands on their face to pose, you do not want them to put their hand fully on their face, because you'll end up having like impressions on their face. So what I suggest is to have your hand slowly, just gently placed on it, but don't push into it, and then, you know, it'll have the same effect, but just you don't have the splodges or whatever. So anyway, sorry, back to the point. Where was I going with that? Oh, I forgot my train of thought. Oh yes, so I adjust people. So I might say, here, do you mind if I move your hand. Do I have permission to touch you? And they'll hopefully say yes. If no, then I'll be like, all right, friend, can you do this for me? But yeah, I might just grab their hips, turn them a little bit. Well, a lot of the time I find to get a good pose shot is don't have your subjects facing like directly on at you. If they are and they don't want to move, then you move yourself and get like a 90-degree angle at them or a side angle at them. But otherwise, I always turn people a little bit side on to you. It gives the person a lot more depth and makes it a bit more interesting, and gives the body also a bit more curves to it instead of just like a blank slate. So yeah, feel free to adjust people if they like it. Good. If they don't, then that's okay. And then yeah, try and get them to do 3-4 different poses. But yeah, I'll just talk about the first photo on our left. So this is in Temple Bar with this gorgeous graffiti in the background. This is a most iconic graffiti in Temple Bar. Become a landmark, I guess. It only went up 5 years ago, I think. It's about recycling, because back then Ireland was dreadful for recycling. We had no recycling in Ireland or in Dublin, and it was very bad. So with our woman in our right with the black, sorry. Her best friend on the left was great and loved to pose. Our woman on the left, on our right, not so much. Now, the thing to do if you have best friends on a shoot or on a tour, and one is bad at posing and one is good, the best thing to do is to try and get them to go together, to do poses together, because they can bounce off each other, and it's not as awkward. So yeah, that's what I suggest anyway. If they don't and they want to just be by themselves, then your job's a little harder then, I guess. I had that on that day. The one on the left really wanted to be by herself and didn't want her friends because apparently the friend is prettier than her, which I was like, I don't know about that. I can't say anything about that, but okay.
I think they both look great. I think
I think they look
great.
great.
You captured them there as well. It's a great photo.
Well, thank you. But yeah, so I would say, just try and get them coupled up together. If they don't want it, then just try different locations until they are comfortable with doing it. So let's move to the middle photo. So with the middle photo, again, this is the same shot of our leading lines. If you're wondering what the background, the building in the background, it's the Dublin City Hall. I normally have a lot of history about this, but I'm not going to go into it because we're not talking about that right now. With this woman, she's kind of doing a very, you can't actually tell it, but she's flipping us off anyway, or she was flipping me off anyway. And she was very, very, what's the word? She had an attitude, basically. And she told me that I actually run into this quite a lot. Her father was a photographer, not professional, just a hobbyist. And she knew everything. So when I would bring her to locations and go, okay, your friends are doing these poses, why don't you? And she would just be like, no, I know how to pose. I know what I have to do, yada, yada, yada. So I'd be like, all right, please, stand here, take this shot. Anyway, she decided to flip me off at this location. I guess she had enough of me telling her what to do. But yeah, with this shot, this was a dangerous shot actually, because there's cars behind us. We're on a main road. This one is all about timing. Now with this shot, what I do is I get the other clients who are standing at the side of the road on the footpath to look behind me, because of course I can't see the cars that are behind me. Now I did ask her, of course, to check it out and to look over my shoulder, but she didn't want to. But yeah, I'd say if you can, use your clients to your advantages. Oh, actually, another thing. Back to the first photo. I got the best friend to stand right over my shoulder and to make stupid faces or funny faces or say funny things, to try and make her friend smile or to do different poses. It's really helpful for people just to do that around, because some people are nervous. Also, people get nervous, of course, with people staring at you. And when you bring someone to a location and you're like, all right, let's stand here, let's do a photo, and there's 50 people to your right and they're all staring at you. You just have to go, okay, guys, just look at me. Just look at me. Forget about the 50 people staring at you and gawking at you and checking you out. Just look at me. But of course,
if I can add to that as well, when you get someone happy and they get a natural smile as well, which is much better as well. It's not only are you breaking down the tension, but you got to capture this really nice moment. It's the trick I use myself a lot, if I can.
Yes. Yeah, it's quite hard though to time it, because people they'll smile and they'll go quickly dropped, and you're just like, oh, can you smile again? And then of course it's faked, and you're just like, oh. But yeah, it's a work in progress, really. Now, third photo. This photo, it's actually pretty well exposed light wise. If you can see how you have all the trees along, there was a gap in the trees, and you got the natural light coming down. Now, with doing this shot, because she's wearing a hat, it can be quite hard to photograph someone, because the natural light will, of course, the hat will block it. So what I always recommend people, or say to people to do, is to just tilt their head up a little bit and to look up, maybe into the sun, or, well, maybe not the sun, but like upper buildings, maybe the roofs of buildings. And then if you're trying to direct people on where to look, how to pose, I would say, look over to my right, look at the third window on this third floor, and point. Or just say, with this woman, she has her chin off to us, but I wanted her eyes to look at the lens. What I normally do is I'll hold my fist out and I'll go, okay, look at my fist, follow my fist, and I'll move it up and left, right, up and down, and then you can follow it. And then once I want them to, because sometimes what happens is, okay, now keep your eyes there, and I'll move my hand and their eyes will go off somewhere. So what I always say is, okay, look at my fist. Okay, now look past my fist, focus on what's past my fist, and then you can drop your hand away, and they'll then hopefully still stay focused onto that area. Now, another thing you might come across, definitely when I bring young girls on tours, they'll always go, how do I get rid of my double chin? And I'm like, all right, I have a perfect solution for this. I was taught this in college. Yes, I don't know, Niall, I think you're okay for this.
I asked the same thing the first time. Like, go on.
Yeah. So there's two ways you can do it. I always find the actual showing way is a lot better, but I'll explain both of them. So one is by pushing your chin out and then tilting up. But the better way to do it, because people always look funky when they do it, is I always turn myself sideways and go, okay, put your hand in front of your face and push your face towards your hand, and then you'll end up not getting your double chin. Yeah. It works. See, Adam, it works for Adam right there. He looks good.
I'm looking at all the videos.
You look good. You look good. I promise. But
it
yeah,
does work. It does work.
It does work. Yeah. So yeah, that's another helpful tip. So if we can move to the next slide, please. All right, Instagram's editing tips. All right, so this one is my worst nightmare to people, because you'll go on Instagram sometimes and people love filters. I hate filters. I tell everyone, please don't use filters. But if you have to use filters, the way to use filters is click on the filter first, and then you click on it again, and then it'll come up with a how do you call it, a slider. And what I do with filters, I'll put the slider down to 10%. Now once you do that down to 10%, the filter is still active on your photo, but there's not so much whatever the filter is, there's not so much of it on it. What I feel with when you have filters on your photos, it kind of destroys them. It oversaturates them and distorts them, maybe gets rid of the color, or rid of the focusness or the sharpness on your photos. So then we have next is the editing tools. So that'll be to the right hand side of the filters. So to start off with, you have your sorry, I need to see, can I give me a second. Okay, actually I can remember what it is. So we have cropping, which is of course to bring the photo in close or to bring it size wise. And then you also have it where you can if it's not horizontal. So for this shot, this was not horizontal. So in a sense, with the rule of thirds, this photo, the left hand side was way up, and it just did not look good. So you can do it in editing, and I just brought it back to parallel and look great. Then we have brightness. So brightness is always good. I suggest when it comes to using the editing tools, always use about 9 of them. And with the editing tools, use about 10-20% on each. So when you hit an editing tool, the middle point is 0. and when you bring it right to left, it'll go minus or plus. I always bring it plus most of the time, and it'll be up to like 10-20%. I would never go higher than 40 because then it oversaturates the photo and distorts it, and it just doesn't look good. The only thing I will bring it up to the only setting actually on it will be the vignetting. So if you look at my left photo here and you look at the corners, there's quite a lot of light. And if you look at the right one and you look at the corners, it's actually quite a lot more darker and a lot more shadows. So that is what vignetting does. It kind of makes a somewhat of a circle around your corners of your photos. It makes it darker. And the reason why I use the vignetting is it kind of also, again, brings the viewer's eye to your subject and makes it stand out. So with the photo on the left, this is before I edited it in Instagram Tools. And then weirdly enough, when after I edited it and I looked at the right-hand photo, somehow the girls got taller and the girl's hair got longer. I don't know how that happened, but it was very interesting to see how that happened. Anyway, so what I've done to this photo is I put some brightness on it and put some saturation, which is basically bringing the colors up, and made it a bit sharper. Now, when it comes to, what was I going to say? I can't remember. Oh, it was a good point. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, warmth. Okay. So I don't know. I think most of you maybe are living in nice warm countries and it's nice and sunny. And when you come to editing photographs, your shots might be quite orange. And you're like, oh, I want to, you might end up to stick a filter on it to get rid of your orange, but I would suggest there's a tool in it called temp, and it looks like a temp gauge, and you can bring it down and bring it left, and it'll make your photo more blue, and that'll make it a lot. People, I don't know why they like blue photos, or not blue, but like they like colder photos, if it's a sunny day anyway. And then of course if you live in Ireland, like me and Niall do, we always I use anyway the temp to bring it up, to make the photos more orange, and make them more alive. And also I do it for making the photos look like a sunny day, even if it's not a sunny day. So I bring the brightness up, and I'll bring the saturation and the temperature up, and it might make it look like a sunny day, and I might get more likes because it's a nicer shot. So we're going to stay on this slide, but I'm going to talk about a few other things like adding depth. So if you focus purely on one subject, whether it's the cat or an apple or a pen or a person or a mountain, try and always look at what is surrounding the subject. Layering up the photograph with patterns or objects will make the image more interesting, as well as add a lot more depth. Each area of the photograph will offer something to look at, as well as drawing you to the photo. So I had this year, and it was dreadful because of our lockdown. I totally lost all my creative aspect, and I just didn't want to go out and photograph. And I haven't photographed since. I haven't photographed since January. So I always say is try and stay creative. If you can't get out photographing, or you can't go out and do tours, try and look up inspiration on Instagram or Google or videos, and keep that mind functioning and thinking, because the worst thing can happen, of course, is losing all that, and then you're just like, I don't want to do anything. And I had that this year, and it's the worst. Now I'm back into it of actually wanting to get out and shoot, but I can't still, because we're still in lockdown, but I'm still planning. I have tons of lists.
If anyone is looking for inspiration, you can go follow the Insta Tours Instagram account. I'm going to put that shameless plug in there if anyone wants any photo tips or ideas. Or you can follow David's account as well, david.lasley. He has some amazing photos up there.
Thank you. So I'm just going to tell you some general tips. So there's probably a better word for it, but I call it cutting body parts. So when it comes to photographing people, a lot of the time you'll see people, they'll be cut off at their elbows, at their knees. They might have fingers cut off. And for me, and for people who look at photographs a lot, it's very, it just doesn't make the photo look good and pop out. So what I suggest, if you don't want to cut off people's limbs, is to cut it off, basically just don't cut off people at their joints. You can cut off middle of the forearm, halfway up the bicep, halfway up your thighs or your calves, halfway up your waist or your chest. But just don't try and cut off at your joints, because it just makes the please also don't cut off fingers, because if you have like two fingers showing and the others, it just makes the photo look quirky, and you kind of people just want to see joints. And then Adam had this question, and I had to make sure to answer this, was when taking photographs on a phone to use either portrait or landscape. Now, if these photos are going to be going to Instagram and only for the purpose of going onto Instagram, then I would say only use portrait. But if not, and it's going to print or anywhere else, you can use landscape. But if you're photographing a landscape just for Instagram, I'd say portrait. Reason why is if you take a landscape shot and you upload it to Instagram, the way they have it set up is that portrait shots are super big and landscape shots get cropped down, and if you're scrolling through, you'll barely see the landscape shots. It'll just be so small. So just try and stick to portrait shots. But otherwise, landscape shots are grand for anything else. Now, another tip is just say in Ireland we have the Cliffs of Moher, and you want to show off how big the Cliffs of Moher are. They're very vast, they're very long, there's a lot of space, and they're cliffs. Yeah, Cliffs of Moher, sorry. But yeah, if you want to show how big they are, what I suggest is to have if you have a person there to try, or if just say you don't have anyone with you, but there's still people around, try and photograph the people far away from you, because that will show how vast the area is. If you have a person close to you or close in the shot, it'll make the location behind you really small. So that is my tip there. And then when it comes to using zoom on cameras, or not cameras, sorry, phone cameras, I suggest not using zoom on phone cameras. If you need to zoom or get closer to a subject, I either suggest moving closer, or else take the photograph and then zoom it in, either through your photos or in Instagram, because what happens is that the photo gets cropped a lot and you'll lose pixels. And if you want to print the photographs afterwards, you can't, because the pixels will be so low. So yeah, I just suggest just don't use zoom. My mother does it a lot. She zoomed. We go to a location. She goes, "Oh, look at this photo. This will be great. Oh, but I want to get this horse in this background." And I'm like, "All right, let's just walk closer." No, I'll just zoom. And I'm like, "Oh no, please don't zoom." So
Am I doing right?
I suggest not zooming. But yes, okay. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about planning a tour through a photographer's perspective. So when I began, when I began working with Insta Tours, I had to start. They give us freedom to plan our own tours. And so I had to, of course, research loads of locations, because even though I live in Dublin, I've never actually done a history tour. I've only actually been to a museum, so I have to look loads of spots. Also another thing with our tours, each tour is an hour and 30 minutes, so I have to time them. So originally I had 10 locations, and then I ended up having 7 locations. But when it comes to looking up locations, of course you can just go and find the historical tips about them. But if you want them to be a lot more interesting, I would suggest checking them out on Google, Instagram, and seeing what photos people have done of them. Because of course you can teach them how to take photographs of it, but also you'll get a lot more views and likes on photos, or people will want to go to these locations if you have good photos of them. If people see a photo done on a phone and not much effort put into it, they might not be so inclined to go to it. So I suggest getting a good photo, and yeah. All right. Sorry, I lost.
Yeah, I think we do need to keep there an eye on time, David, because we have run over the hour, unfortunately. Just to be aware of that.
Well, I've now my last bit is outro. Well, I hope. Well, that includes my presentation. I hope everyone maybe learned something. If you didn't, then not to worry. I might have talked too quick or too in depth about certain things, but I hope someone learned something anyway. Also, I just want to say if we run out of time for questions, Adam has my email. So if anyone has any questions photography wise, they can just shoot me an email and I can answer it to the best of my ability anyway.
Yeah, there's actually the next slide there, so I'm gonna take over. But David, that was amazing. Thank you. I've seen some of the tips before, but every time you do it, I just get blown away by how great you are and how much passion you have for it. I was going to do a quick key takeaways, but I think as we're running short of time, we might just skip this part. But basically, you got a few things there. Something I like to add is with the grid part is there's actually a grid on your phone as well. I don't know if you can see that. You can go to settings and you can put on assisted grid, and that will automatically give you a grid setup like this. I don't know if you can see small lines, and that can help you with the positioning and stuff as well. So you can go to the next slide there. I'm going to breeze through these slides because I'm aware of the time. But basically as well, we're going to be expanding to the UK once the lockdown ends on May 17th. So we plan to be opening up in 3 new locations there: Manchester, Liverpool, Edinburgh. And then after that, we're going to go to Glasgow, Birmingham, Bristol, and further on to Oxford, Cambridge, Brighton, and then hopefully the big one, London, at the end of it to cap it all off. So we go to the next slide there. If you guys love the tour and you want to have a look around some more stuff, or you're in the UK, or maybe one day if you may make it to the US, we do have a discount code on the next slide there, just if anyone's ever interested and we're out of lockdown. You can also follow us on Instagram. And just like David said, look, we're very friendly people and we're probably also bored out of our mind with lockdown, but shoot us a message, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, website, anything, and happy to help with any photography stuff. And do come on the tour if you can. I want to breeze through the questions pretty quick. I think the first one was about the size of Instagram. Yeah, Instagram photos are done in a square. I'm pretty sure the highest resolution you can get is 1080 by 1080 for the Instagram size. They resize it for memory format. So when you're taking photographs, I think the best way is to get the highest resolution possible. This will be capped because of Instagram's thing. So we recommend doing portrait with at least 1080p is probably for your best bets. The reason for portrait, as David said, is that it gets shrunk. When you do landscape, you got to cut it down to the square format in there. And let me see, what was the next question there? If I could go through these quickly. How to resize, by the way, there's crop photos. You can crop it on your phone, or you can crop it with an editing software. I might pass some of these questions to you. There's another one, like Dave, there's one about the laptop software. I would use Photoshop myself, I'm pretty sure, for severe editing. I think you'd be the same, would it be?
Well, I use Lightroom. It's a little easier to learn. Photoshop, there's a lot of tools, and I still have to learn it. It's difficult, but yeah. Otherwise, yeah, Lightroom. There's also different apps that you can download for
Canva's
free
one I've used.
that are quite easy, and yeah,
Do you think,
just,
guys, that the editing software that come with most people's phones is sufficient to kind of, if you've taken a good base photo to start with, if you've got the light right and the angles right and everything that you've just very kindly taken us through, if you've got that right, do you think that there needs to be much editing for Instagram after that, or do you think you need to?
Hey, why don't you answer first and I'll come in after?
I would say so, like just to make the photo pop a little more, because when you take a photo on your camera, it kind of takes a neutral photo and it doesn't put much color into it. So the reason why I always edit through Instagram is just to put more color into the photo, maybe more brightness, because yeah, when you take a photo, it's very neutral, and yeah.
Right. Okay.
I think as well, we touched on it a bit earlier. Ideally, you don't want to edit your photo. Your photo should be as optimized as possible beforehand. So the editing will hopefully be minimal and you let the photo do the talking. So I would say yes, most of the editing software on your phones is perfect for it. But ideally, you capture the moment with it first, like the pre-edit, if you get me. You set it up to get that great photo. Sorry, is there any? There's one there about like, are we photographers who do tours, whatever? We are tour guides. Our tours do focus on photography. So like as we're not doing as much of a historical tour. We do add that in if we can, but we prioritize photography in fairness. So when people come on our tour, they're obviously not expecting a full-on historical tour. So they're aware of what they're getting. But just to address that, we are like a photography-based tour with proper tour guides. We try to hire people who are professionally trained as photographers if ideal, but it's not actually. There's some very talented people who aren't professionally trained, still take great photos. David, I was hoping you could answer this one as well, but I might add into it as well. Posing for a large group or photo. I find just making sure everyone's looking at the camera is the most important part.
Yeah,
do you have any tips for large groups?
I'd say probably, well, it depends on the number, of course. I normally do 3 rows. So I'll have maybe people either squatting down, then people yeah, either lying down, squatting down, and then just having just 3 rows of people. Otherwise, ask them. They might be comfortable at doing a certain pose. Most of the time, I would not suggest doing lines. Lines are just the worst thing to do. So either 3 rows or a triangle or a square type of formation is always good.
I find as well the hand tip as well works really well in large groups because you all kind of want to be them to be looking in the same place.
Or
So that
countdown
actually
is
helps
good
you
as well.
give them something to look at. And you could always go with the kid's birthday party tip of shouting sausages or something beforehand. Generally gets a laugh at least the first time. Maybe not the 4th time, but the first time it will work. If you're not supposed to use Zoom, why is it on the phone? That is a good question. I think if you look at the optics, though, the Zoom just kind of ruins the pixel thing. So that's why we advocate for zooming on the editing software if you do want to zoom. The Zoom does have a function. Maybe you want to zoom in on some very specific part. It is there for a good reason. But in terms of just pure photo editing software, we do prefer the editing, like just doing the editing part. How many stops did you have on a 90-minute tour? So that's a good question. It's really up to the tour guides. We like to give our tour guides a creative license to do whatever, but the standard would be 6. We have 4 main locations that would be known beforehand that we tell. We also have two kind of hidden gems that we like to keep secret that we'll give to the tourists or the guests when they come as well. So that's really it. We go for 6 generally, but at the same time, we like to give as much creative license to our photographers as possible because at the end of the day, it's an art, not a science. New advance of optical zooms. I didn't know that. So maybe that's a good tip there, optical zooms. What about zooming on a camera? I think that comes down to...
Niall, can you just explain the optical zoom versus digital zoom? So optical zoom, from a layman's point of view, from my point of view, is kind of you're moving the lenses. So the lenses is bringing the light in, whereas the digital zoom is increasing what the lens is seeing. Is that right? So digital zoom therefore pixelates, and optical zoom gives a much sharper image. Am I correct, or am I talking absolute rubbish? And should I be quiet?
Oh, this is why I bring my expert David to answer these tough questions. I can just look pretty and stay here. Don't worry.
I have no idea.
I refer to the expertise you have on this case. I'm pretty sure you're right, though. I don't know if it helps, but we might learn together here.
Oh, I have no idea. I don't know that much knowledge about that.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure my case where the optical zoom, like, it's just enhanced with the pixels, but I just can't say with certainty because I haven't researched it that much beforehand. Right. But I think Nick is also agreeing in the comments there. So
that's fine. It's fine.
Guys, maybe we'll Google afterwards. We can learn together. But I'm pretty sure with the cameras, the resolution holds up.
I trust Nick. If Nick says that's right, then we'll go with that, and move on.
Nick, do you want to job with Insta Tours? You're going to be the number 3 in this presentation group. Yeah, if there's any more questions.
There was a question about sunlight, and I think everyone's kind of taught not to take a photo.
The sun in the background, wasn't it?
With the sun coming towards you, but always have it behind you. But I guess it depends on the angles, doesn't it, David, and the exposure and stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Like if as the person who's taking the photo, definitely try and have the sun behind you. But it just depends on the day, of course. If it's a super sunny day, your model then might have the ghost look, but it just depends where you are, really. I'd say, if it's a cloudy day and it's a dull day and there's no sun, then it doesn't really matter where the sun is, because
yeah, I think we kind of addressed that in the lighting aspect, so hopefully that really covered the question. But if not, another thing to watch out for is just make sure they're not looking into the sun and they squint their eyes. I've done that where you're like,
one tip for that is, if you have to photograph someone looking into the sun, one thing I do is tell them to close their eyes and then count down 3, 2, 1. And on the 1, of course, get them to open their eyes and then just click right away and then let them close their eyes again. But that's only if you have to. Otherwise, you might leave your person blind for a little bit of time, seeing white dots around the place.
And also just bring sunglasses.
Yeah.
There you go. I swear I didn't have that planned. I think if there's any more questions, feel free to put them in. We got some more people weighing in on the digital versus optical. So optical is glass and digital is pure pixels. Thank you, James. I think that will clear it up. And most new phones have 3 lenses. I didn't know that one, but that is great to know. The phones these days are almost as good as cameras. We do advocate for a camera, but the new phones these days are almost as good. Okay, Dave, as a pure photographer specialist, for what I want to do, which is maybe get a few likes on my Instagram, they can definitely do the job.
The only thing I would say with difference with cameras and phones is with cameras, you could probably blow up a photo to an A1 print. With phone photos, you can probably, biggest maybe would be an A4 page. Anything bigger, they normally can't print that size. That's the only difference I'd say.
For anyone getting large scale posters up of themselves, please use a camera.
Cool. Well, listen, guys, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. Really appreciate the effort that went into that presentation. To everybody that's on the call, thank you so much. I'm sorry there was a hiccup with some of the times for you guys over in the West, and sorry for the change of link. If you only just managed to log on, I've recorded the session. We'll publish it in a couple of days once I can kind of get around to uploading it. And just a final word to say thanks a lot to Niall and David. If you're in the UK, look out this year for Insta Tours coming to a city near you, and you know, get involved and go on their tours, and you know, maybe help improve your photography skills. And if you're already an expert photographer, then just shoot Niall an email and he'll give you a job straight away. So thanks a lot, guys. Really appreciate it.
And I want to say thanks again to Adam for organizing as well, by the way. We had a great time, and thanks for such wonderful questions. So, and if anyone's watching, recording this, or has any further questions, message us up on the Instagram page, LinkedIn, anything you can find. I would advocate for Instagram first because we're called Insta Tours, obviously. But yeah, don't be a stranger.
Cool. Cheers, guys. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate that. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.